I started riding bikes in Asheville, North Carolina, which has got some great biking. And then I was in grad school and my roommate was biked a lot and I started biking with her. And then I met my husband and he was a huge cyclist. I got offered my job here after grad school and we moved here and I didn't have any friends and I met one person and she's like, yeah, we're getting together and riding tomorrow. And I was like, okay, cool. And I showed up and all these really friendly, badass women were just riding in the Rattlesnake. The people that I met there are my best friends to this day, we raise our kids together now and it's pretty awesome and we're teaching our kids how to ride bikes.
Took 2 weeks vacation for the honeymoon. A couple tickets all inclusive down in Cancun. Couldn't get my money back so I'm in seat 7A. I'm getting drunk on a plane. I bet the fella on the aisle thought I was crazy, 'cause I taped your picture to the seat back right beside me. Now I've got empty mini bottles filling both our trays. I'm getting drunk on a plane. Buying drinks for everybody but the pilot. It's a party. Got the 737 rocking like a G6.
I grew up in Butte, Montana, so I'd always been around Montana. I came to Missoula in 1989 and lived here for a year and then went back and did training in San Francisco. One of the people I met in San Francisco is named Gary Fisher. We met him and he let us use some bikes.
I started mountain biking when I was pretty little with my parents. They're both big mountain bikers, they still ride.
And then I moved out here in 1998 and was doing the cross-country thing for a while. And then had an opportunity to buy my first full suspension bike and realized I had been doing it all wrong for years.
We had this date marked on the calendar forever. We'd take that new red limo airport ride together. Feel like a plastic room alone there at the top of the cave. I'm getting drunk on a plane.
You first.
It was really fun. Honestly, I obviously rode bikes as a little kid, rode bikes through high school, used to ride bikes with my dad growing up.
Back in the early days, there really weren't mountain bikes. In 1984, 1983 or 84, I bought a kind of a homemade mountain bike from a guy who built it in his shop. He had a little shop in a garage.
So Julie Huck was like my first spirit guide into mountain biking, and I started riding with her crew and just kind of became obsessed with the ability to get out and see things around here in Missoula.
I just loved how I could just take off for 3 or 4 hours and get lost in the woods, exploring.
I was working in the office one day and this fellow Stuart Crook, who's our tours director, walks in with this bike and I was like, what the hell is that? He was telling me about, mountain biking around Missoula. I was like, why would anybody want to do that? It just sounds so hard. I was a road rider at the time.
Oh man, I started mountain biking when I was a teenager growing up in San Diego, California. I was working at a bike shop.
Yeah, I grew up kind of just exploring the Rattlesnake with my brother on our single speed bikes, and we just go on random adventures. We were kind of hooked from that point.
Well, geez, my first mountain bike memory was going to Moab with a couple of friends in college. That was pretty much when I realized I can continue to do this. This is something that I can do, and I don't have to do whatever the hell else I was thinking I was going to do with my life.
I had one phone number, called it, just pulled my car in, and we were on the Sawmill Trail within 30 minutes of me parking my car. We're walking across the bridge, and of course it's a beautiful sunset in August. I'm like, this is home, Missoula is home.
Missoula was a logging town with a lot of motorcycle riders. Most of the kids that grew up here rode dirt bikes into what's now the Rattlesnake Wilderness routinely. It was legal. And then the motorcycle stuff was closed off. The Rattlesnake became a recreational area and then a wilderness. So really the mountain bike was king then if you wanted to get around those areas. When I moved back to Missoula in '90, I was hungry to mountain bike. And There wasn't much around here. There wasn't a place to get bikes. Sam Braxton had the bike shop. It was on South Avenue. And he kind of built frames but carried giants. And he'd go in and Sam didn't talk much, but his wife Shirley taught piano lessons in the bike shop, and she was very charismatic, and you didn't walk out of there unless she sold you a bike.
People were finding places to go biking. Of course, there wasn't any social media. There wasn't, if you were looking for a place to ride, you saw something on a bulletin board.
Any trail we had in Missoula was steep. If you rode Wallman, once you crossed the creek, it was straight up. That's how the trail system was hard uphill and then fast downhill. It wasn't flowy or built or sidewalls. It was rutted.
And a lot of them were old horse trails or just old, deer paths, some of them that, worked on connecting together. Like the first time I rode Fence Line and then into Turkey Trail, we just sort of found it. It wasn't even used. It was just this little pathway.
I mean, it was almost unsurvivable on those bikes, even now. We get good at crashing. The neighborhood I lived in, there were 3 or 4 people that mountain biked. And so we just started riding together. And then pretty soon we met a lot of other people that were riding and started riding every Thursday night.
That's kind of how I met a lot of people, was there was a Thursday night bike ride. I don't even know how we got the word out back then, but we always met a different parking lot every Thursday at 5:45.
The urban interface in Missoula is incredible. You've got Blue Mountain and Rattlesnake and Patty all within a bike ride. And so we knew there was unlimited potential here to build trails. It was just more frustrating trying to get the trails built.
Prior to the 90s, there was no thought about mountain bikers on trails. And then as the sport evolved, I believe the Forest Service kind of was catching up. It was like, hey, these people are out here.
The trail budgets for the forest back in the 80s were like bunk. I had the trail program at Superior. By saying I had the trail program, I was the trail planner, the trail administrator, I was the trail crew, I was the trail everything. There was no money. And so what had resulted was a lot of trails were really grown over, but users had developed a lot of trails on their own.
You kind of knew, like, there were some people who were quietly doing stuff and you came across it.
Yeah, it definitely was a gray area. And there was some, hard feelings about certain trails that mountain bikes got cut out of.
Well, I'd say what we did was ride-in trails that were game trails. And there were more people that made it a life's passion to do that. And spent their time, say, in the Rattlesnake above Lincoln Hills, just riding in trails because they lived up there.
Who built that one? Yes. And I'm going to remember his name in a minute. Kurt Kruger. Kurt Kruger was a mover there, yeah.
A little bit about the early characters that you
I think the best character I can name is, who's still out there, I believe, is Kurt Kruger.
Kurt kept some of his trail building on the lowdown, not really, announcing it, but he's like, oh, look at this trail here, let's come ride it.
I've been introduced by the climbing coalition around town. Kurt is supposed to push stuff so that we can look good in the middle. And the same thing can apply to bikes.
You cannot mountain bike off trail, but I think you can hike off trail. And so he would hike off trail to create a trail. And then it was a trail. And then he'd mountain bike on it.
My role, I think, is to fix problems before people in parks got any knowledge. And I'd rather just fix the problem and take the consequences. Easier to ask for forgiveness than permission.
And I know he got in trouble once. They caught him on camera working on a trail that was closed.
We did ride them, and thanks to Kurt for those and his pioneering spirit, I guess, if you will.
A quote from one of the city managers, unnamed, was, Kurt, I like to, and I need to use you, but you piss everybody off.
All those trails that we rode and kind of worked on a little bit, finally when the Forest Service came around and inventoried them, they all became numbered or named trails. So we all still kind of giggle at that.
Oh yeah, quite a few of the non-system trails did get added to the system. Oh yeah, it was, I'm trying to figure percentage-wise, I'd say well over 50% of them. One day my boss, who was a very creative, forward-thinking man, Jerry Covalt, said, Andy, come in my office, I want to talk to you. He goes, this mountain biking thing, it's really taken off. It's really taken off, this mountain biking thing. And I went, yeah. And he goes, we got to do something.
Mostly we were riding on what other people considered just hiking trails. Essentially, that's where the conflict began. If you've hiked somewhere for years and years and never seen a bike come by you, and all of a sudden biking is becoming more and more popular.
You know, the mountain biking was just really starting to take off in the late 80s in Missoula. Just got to be enough people that started to feel like we needed a voice for where we can ride. Can we work with agencies to maybe get some more riding opportunities out there?
So we called this meeting, and word got out in the community that the Forest Service is calling a mountain bike meeting because they're going to shut down the rattlesnake and mountain biking. That was the word. And everybody was hot. They came in there, battle axes drawn.
There was like about 40 people there, and we were just brainstorming ways to like reduce conflict or, you know, kind of put a stop to this problem that the Forest Service was seeing it as a problem, not as much as an opportunity.
Group consensus from there and some after meeting discussions was that we should form a nonprofit mountain bike club.
Let's form this organization. And Andy definitely had a hand in how this was being formed and the naming of it too. So that's where the Low Impact Mountain Bicyclist LIM name came from. You know, we were very active in like 98, 99 through, I don't know, probably 2004 or 5. It was sort of the same crew, but there were younger people coming into it too. You know, there's a lot of downhill riding and people were getting into that. So we thought, well, maybe we should, you know, get more people that are into downhill riding.
Scott Eldon opened the Bike Doctor in 1994. At the time, it was where Meadow Sweet Herbs is now. We bought the shop in November of '97. That was right at the time where, you know, this free riding stuff was exploding.
When I hooked up with the Bike Doctor crew, there was a group of friends that kind of formed, and they dubbed it the safety team. And we spent all of our time in the woods, you know, shuttling deadmans, building trails, riding trails. Eric was a big pioneer, you know, Chris Winter, myself, Dylan, a lot of people that have come and gone over the years that were kind of part of the early scene.
Everyone had that itch. People love bikes, but there was something about, you know, just climbing up the hill really fast that was, people could feel there was more.
A lot of what we were doing as far as like the free ride aspect was on private property. You know, as you kind of branch out from there, you start to realize how much forest is in and around Missoula. You know, we kind of started just building trails wherever, kind of off the beaten path, I guess, more.
You would look for what was already there that you could incorporate. And yeah, people would definitely, you know, taking nails and boards. And
some of the early riding crews did, there were a couple carpenters in there too, which also, you know, helped quite a bit. But yeah, just kind of figuring things out and just seeing what worked and what doesn't.
We had this one ranger that came in who was a mountain biker, and what he did was he went out and he told a group of mountain bikers that they could build these structures on national forests.
At the top of Deadman's, with the blessing of the Forest Service, we were allowed to build a little technical area that had a couple log rides and a couple jumps and a couple drops that were really fun, and they were all natural.
That were illegal and against policy and prohibited. It's like, what the fuck are you doing? When you manage national forest recreation, you manage it for everybody. If you love to ski or you love to horseback ride or you love to mountain bike, as a professional recreation manager, that does not mean that you manage those lands for your favorite uses.
I mean, there's trails out in the woods that, you know, no one will ever find nowadays that haven't been ridden in 20 years and are unrideable now, but are just really cool time capsules of kind of what was going on back then.
Well, there's always excitement when you're doing something that's a little bit on the edge, right? You know, you're literally riding in the gray area. There was a really fast ride that maybe some people would have called a race that happened in the Rattlesnake that was known as the Grim, greatest rider in Missoula. There were flower markings on the trail in the Snake. A lot of us participated, and then there was a complaint registered with the Forest Service, and we had to fess up. That didn't really help things for a while.
And they're in a tough spot. I mean, most of their money was spent on litigation for timber sales, and so probably 70-80% of their budget was just fighting litigation on timber sales and decommissioning or rebuilding roads. So, I mean, for a bike group to walk in there and say, we'd like 100 feet of trail, that was pretty low priority. Yeah, rightfully. I mean, so I understand their side, but not really.
And at the same time, around that time, we changed the name to Mountain Bike Missoula too. I was still a member, but they decided not to really have memberships anymore. And so I kind of fell out of the organizing committee, and then I don't know how many years it laid fallow before somebody started it up again. I'm not sure.
So it kind of went dormant for a little while.
I feel like it went dormant for a while. We still had some pretty good cash in the bank account, but it went dormant for a little while.
I think as more people started to mountain bike and they saw the impact, they really had to start limiting, what events were where and when. And again, that turned us towards Marshall, just because privately held, able to maybe build some more challenging trails at the time.
Tell me about when some of the focus started to shift to trail building.
2010, when we won a bid for the Pro XCT and didn't have a course, got very serious very fast. Sean Radley was the kind of point person, but that race grew from a group of community members who had seen high-level bike racing in Western Montana. We want to work with you on putting on bringing back Ecology Center Classic. And Sean was like, that's a good idea, but road is dead and we should do mountain bike racing.
It was cool for me because, at that time I was racing a lot, I was traveling. They were like, hey, we want to put on a National Series race here in Missoula. Do you think we could do this at Marshall?
When we told people we have an opportunity to look at this mountain as a canvas, clean slate, we can do what we want. People got so excited to put something into Missoula that we had never seen before, that we had all wanted for a long time.
People were volunteering their time. Like, I had a baby strapped to me. My daughter was just born at the time, and I was doing registration, and I was like strung out and exhausted.
I remember the first climb, we were like walking up that, I was like, oh yeah, this is fine. Definitely not too steep. And then like getting out there on a bike and was like, oh, this is a pretty steep course.
You were like riding over bushes and rocks and stuff, just like hoping you're gonna make it. And I feel like that's the Missoula vibe anyways. Like, it's just like not perfect, but that's what makes it so amazing.
And that course was brutal, and it was almost all single track. The folks at Bike Doctor built this big drop, the A-line drop.
The free ride group coming to throw something interesting, give something for people to watch out there and for racers to fear.
On the pro circuit, if I remember correctly, old guy, not a lot of hair. But what I remember is that when the pros came here, they kind of lost their minds.
It's not fair. You don't put something like this in a cross-country race. Look at a cross-country race today. If you don't have one drop like that in the race, that's not a World Cup level race. If you don't have gnarly descents that are rooty and rocky, that is not a World Cup cross-country race. At that time, 2011, there was St. Peter Maritzburg in South Africa, Mount St. Anne. Only 2 races in the world that had technical races, and Missoula XC. I would like to say that Missoula XC was part of what has shaped the direction of current cross-country bikes. Boasting, maybe, not too much.
And then the culture, everyone's like unapologetically real. It was kind of like, yeah, ride it or don't. Enjoy yourself. And I think people appreciated that. They were like, this place is real. These people are great. They're just like out to have a good time.
A bunch of different groups that came together to kind of like make those trails happen and that race happen. That was such a cool thing for me, professional racer at the time, traveling all over, to be able to bring what I do to the hometown and get to show that off was so much fun.
Right around that time was the same time that Matt Barnes and some other people with MTV Missoula were kind of resurrecting it from where it had been in the 90s.
You know, I'd jump on the Thursday night rides with the older crowd and have a blast. And one evening after riding bikes, you know, I was like, you know, nothing's happening with that organization and there's some money sitting in an account. Why don't you do something with it? Honestly, the first thing was like, let's spend this money on something. Like, let's just get rid of it. Once that's gone, we'll just be done.
They were able to reestablish a cost share agreement with the Forest Service to do maintenance on the trails of the region.
You know, that momentum thing kind of starts to happen where, you know, you didn't really plan on it, but it does start going somewhere.
Once the Missoula XC trails were built, people were like, oh, we can do, maybe there's other opportunities, and I think that just kind of grew and grew and grew from there.
There was also kind of this distance between the community in Missoula that was building trails and the community in Missoula that was racing trails. There wasn't a lot of crossover.
And what we heard was like, man, there's a lot of mountain bikers and we don't know who to talk to. It would be really easy for us as land managers if you would all just get on the same page.
Then we could more effectively be part of, you know, big picture conversations.
And not just out there maybe building on a legal trail that becomes legal someday.
You know, start small. Give us an opportunity to just do a little bit of a demonstration on a trail. You know, we'll clean up some trail.
Five Valleys Land Trust saw that work and said, hey, that, like, you guys are doing a good job. Would you like to build some trails at Marshall Mountain? And we said, of course, yeah.
Those are trails that we've been asking for decades. I mean, literally decades of being here, you know, like Bjorn again.
Then we started having offers to, hey, let's do a big project.
What's the next project we get to do? In that case, it was Hello Kitty, meetings with the Deanstone Committee, and so we were looking at High, Wide, and Handsome, House of Sky. It was really just like, what's the next project we can do, for me personally.
That took a period of time where we had to essentially prove that we could do that, prove that we knew what we were doing.
We've done things that I never thought were possible. I mean, the Marshall Mountain example alone, I mean, that was a hell of a lift. And we couldn't have done it without almost multi-decadal partnership. It evolved.
A lot of our work is partner-based. We're working with other user groups. We're working with partners. It's bigger than just us. It's bigger than just our sport now. We've got youth program partnerships. We partner with Zootown Derailers. We partner with Missoula Mammoth's NICA team.
We have a whole bunch of land managers that help take care of the land. My job is to support the people and what the people in our community need through providing them awesome recreation programs, where other parks and recreation programs across the country are playing basketball and kicking soccer balls. We're mountain biking.
20, 30 years ago, we had to look externally for our entertainment and our interaction. And now, 2024, you can basically just live your whole life right in front of you. Mammoth is a 2-hour practice twice a week. And for those 2 hours, nothing else exists in the world. The only thing you're thinking about is riding my bike up this hill and then focusing and having a great time riding down.
Having programs that create those opportunities to show people how to do it, and also show people how good we have it here. Pretty much every direction of our valley you go, there's a trail system.
You can start from your door and get to a trail and go for a ride and come back home and only be on your bike. I think that's special. And you know, it's certainly, other communities have it, but there's very few communities of this size with 100,000 people living in that have that for the bulk of their citizenry.
But I think I thought that those things were like a 2 or 3 year long game or something, and then after many more years than that, you realize, no, it's like a 10 to 15 year long game.
Nothing that we did was particularly unique or special, right? People have been building mountain bike trails in this community for a long time. This community is going to continue to build mountain bike trails, and that's what is exciting about having been a part of this organization, is having the opportunity to carry the water for a little while.
Yeah, what do you have to say about your departure?
Yeah, I think...
I'm sorry, I was just fucking with him.
I gave what I had.
Right,
yeah.
You gave what you had.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then...
I gave what I had, yeah, that's a good line.
I actually don't know how interesting all
Covers the bases.
And it wasn't always that way. I mean, Missoula always had adventurous people, but it was a logging town, you know, with a very liberal university. So it didn't have that it built its outdoor adventure through the years.
I mean, I'm lucky enough to work in one of the many bike shops in town, and it's like, we have like the coolest people in the world coming here, and they all ride bikes, and everyone wants to ride bikes, and it's like, everywhere you go, you know, you always see someone with a smiling face no matter what trail you're on, and people are always having a great time and always in a good mood. So it's got to be the community, you know? It's like, I love riding my bike, but man, I love people watching too in the woods, and it's just great for all of that.
I try to think of other places that are a town that is a town this size, it's a university town, that has this kind of recreation, mountain biking, paddling, skiing, so close. I really don't know where else in the world you're gonna find everything, including like a university type of setting.
One day I was riding through Greeno with one of my girlfriends, and there was a pack of women in like their 70s going on a group ride. And their kids are my friends, their grandkids are like learning how to ride a bike with my kid, and we're all just like in this huge system together. We just try and keep moving the pulse along.